Hey everyone, welcome to the Smiling Homeschooler Podcast. We're glad you can join us. As you can see, we have a special guest who we will introduce here in just a second. But before we begin, we do want to say thank you to Teaching Textbooks for helping make the Smiling Homeschooler possible. They're an amazing math curriculum, and we've used them for years and years and years, and we think you'd really enjoy it as well. So if you haven't checked them out, you should. The school year, unfortunately, is coming in just, hopefully another month or so for most of you, but you can check out a free trial at teachingtextbooks.com if you need to make a change in your math, and we really appreciate their support. Also, we want to say thank you to Samaritan Ministries and REDEEM HealthShare, where members are committed to honoring Christ and serving one another through healthcare needs. As my dad Todd likes to say, we use, love, and recommend Samaritan Ministries, and you can learn more at samaritanministries.org/familyman. And we appreciate them as well. But all right, Dad, if you're ready to go ahead and get started, let's go.
Okay, well, hey, everybody. We're super excited to be coming to you. Well, I was going to say live. I guess we're not really live unless you're listening live. But school is coming up. I hate saying the S word because it just bothers me that we're saying it this early. But I know some of you are already starting to think about it. And I was telling Ben, we should talk about things that you can add to your school day that don't feel like traditional school. And that's how we're going to start the show, because we've got a special guest with us, Tatton Strassheim from World Watch News. And Tatton, it's a pleasure having you on the show.
Yeah, it's great to be here. Thanks for having me.
Well, if you've listened to the show for very long, you know that I'm a big World Watch fan. We use it as a family. Now Ben didn't, because he's too old for that. But he's elderly. But for our last two homeschoolers, it was the highlight of our day. Every morning, World Watch News came on. We could be traveling. Even sometimes in the summer, we would watch World Watch News because they loved it. And so we've had the Big Bash on our show a couple times. But Tatton, you're part of the World Watch family. So why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself? He's also from Indiana, which is a Hoosier. We always like to lead with that. Mm-hmm. So tell us a little about yourself and how you got started with World Watch.
Yeah, Hoosier. I grew up in the Midwest, Michigan for half of that, and then Indiana for the other half of that. I hail from Carmel, the roundabout capital of the United States, proudly.
That's true. That is true.
Yeah, we got to get the rest of the country on that. But yeah, and then my parents homeschooled me up until a certain point. We did a homeschool co-op. I ended up in Patrick Henry College studying journalism, and from there landed at World Watch.
Nice. And so what's your role at World Watch? Because even though my wife and my son and my last son now watch World Watch, I don't get to watch it all the time. So what's your role within World Watch?
Yeah, I'm a reporter. So what that means is I help write the show every day, and then I am actually on camera doing some of our feature stories.
That's awesome. So if they subscribe, which I'm going to encourage them to do that in just a little while, they'll see you every day. Or just about every day.
Yeah, every week, usually.
Okay, every week. Okay. So what is that? So for those who don't know what World Watch is, I always describe it as 10 minutes of smiles in your homeschool day. But tell us, what someone could expect from subscribing.
Yeah, 10 Minutes of Smiles is a pretty good way to put it. It is a news program that is specifically engineered for families and students. It's 10 minutes. We put it out every morning. And the idea is, as opposed to a traditional broadcast news outlet, where, they've got to fill hours and hours of runtime. They've got to get a lot of clicks. We are just bringing you what we think are the 10, most important stories every day. And that doesn't just mean the negative stories.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, and that's what I was going to say, because I think, in this day and age, I think there is so much noise, so much fear, so many outlets just pushing and pushing and pushing to get views, as you said. So I guess what is your approach? Obviously most important, but do you take an approach that is to try to cut down on fear, or how do you reduce some of that noise? Because I think that is something that World Watch News can really be for, a parent who has a kid who does want to they want to keep them informed, but they don't want to, instill all of the rest of the stuff that comes with that if you just go to normal, typical news.
Yeah, well, the main thing is we're a Christian news source. So our tag out at the end of the show every day, whatever the news, the purpose of the Lord will stand. And so that gives us a certain amount of stability when it comes to reporting the news. We know that God is in control and we have um, his truth revealed to us in the Bible, which is a great help, especially as people kind of turn away from objectivity in news reporting.
Mm.
Um, that's something we talk a lot about at World is objectivity, which, in the past meant you go and you try to just report the facts as they are. Um, but it turns out that's kind of hard to do. My professor actually was fond of saying, Les Sillers, there's no such thing as an uninterpreted fact.
Mm.
And so at World, what we do with that is we say, well, the only person who really has a truly objective perspective is God. And
Mm.
so when God is clear about something, we can be clear about something. And, when he's not, that's an opportunity for us to be a little bit more balanced. And we don't have to have the exact, final correct interpretation of everything, but we can be diligent and learn and do our
Well,
best.
I think another of course, I'm not in your writers' meetings, but I know that what I really appreciate it is that it's highly engaging, but there are no surprises. I mean, because there's a lot of crud going on in the news, and so as a family who was really cautious about some of the things that our kids are exposed to because of their age or because of they're just not mature enough. Really you don't we don't have to sit on pins and needles hoping that it doesn't turn this way. In fact, I know that if there is something that's coming up, we're kind of warned. And so as a parent we can watch it ahead and then say, hey, yeah, this is okay. And I really appreciate that about World Watch News, and I know a lot of parents do.
Yeah, that's super important. We sort of view the show as a jumping off point for families. So when there is sensitive subject matter in the news, it's always a matter of discretion for us. Is that something that we're going to cover? And if we cover it, we're going to send out a caution to families so that they know, hey, this is a portion of the show that you might want to listen to first before you show your
Mm.
kids. And then when it comes to, the really controversial stuff, um, sometimes that's just an opportunity for us to, introduce the topic. We did a bunch of coverage for America's 250th, and Caleb Bailey, one of our reporters, did a feature on religion and the American founding.
Hmm.
And that's a tricky subject. So at the very beginning of the feature, it was just like, yeah, this is something for you guys to, talk about and look into further. But, here's basically where we would start with that.
Mm.
Nice.
Mm.
Yeah, I mean, I think obviously it's an amazing resource, and I mean, you can. I know mom and dad have been part of it for a long time. So I guess what does that look like for families? What are they signing up for? What are they committing to? Do you guys have other options or opportunities? That they can get more than just the daily thing. I don't know. I guess are there extra things as well? I guess what does that look like for a normal, typical family?
Yeah, so the typical routine is I know people love to watch it over breakfast. So, it's 10 minutes, easy to fit right into your morning.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and we zip through that pretty quickly, but there's a nice, blend and pace of different
Mm.
pieces. So, but it's not just the daily show. We're working on other stuff all the time. We just released our first season of something called Reality Check, which is a worldview segment where we have a couple of worldview experts come on and help us break down some difficult questions, some big questions, like, the problem of evil, for instance.
Mm.
Nice. Yeah. And
Well,
is that part
go
of
ahead.
their, if they sign up for World Watch, or how do you access that? What's that all look like?
Yeah. Yeah, that's part of the subscription.
Mm-hmm.
So everything is housed right there on worldwatch.news. Once you subscribe, you get access to our full catalog, every show that we've ever done. And we've been doing this since 2020, along with all of our feature stories within those shows. So there's a lot of stuff to browse through. One thing we like to think that we're sort of building up knowledge in the show. So we may introduce something in one episode that we reference later, or we might do an explainer on a topic, like free speech, or something science related, or something technology related that we can link people back to later, which is something we commonly do.
And again, like I said, it's highly engaging. It feels fast paced. I know that there's not, I wouldn't, maybe not always, but there's often a special interest kind of story at the, a squirrel that water skis or something like that, which is super fun. And, for a mom, who's trying to fill content, you don't have to do anything. You just turn it on. And that's a big selling point for us. And again, I know that sometimes in homeschooling, there's a lot of non-smiling times. This is a smiling time. And I don't know if you've seen this, Tatton, but I know that for certain of my kids, they like to be in the know, and so where we're not consuming news on a huge, it's not on our television every night. This allows my kids to know something so that, whether it's the World Cup, and maybe they're not soccer fans, but they are football fans. I don't know which one it is. It's a round ball and it's black and white. That's all I know. But they can talk about it. And I have one son who loves to talk about something that he just heard. And that, as a parent, we like that as well. Well, hey, we need to get to the nuts and bolts about it. So right now, this, that they have a special over there that you can get. I think I was just looking at 30 days, free, but we're allowing them, or you get 7 days for free. That's for anybody can come and get a trial. But if they use our code Todd30, they get an extra 30 days. But if they use the link that Ben's going to put in the show notes, they get an extra 30 days, which I think is like 60 or 67 days when you subscribe. That doesn't mean you can kind of, just kind of test that out. You really have to subscribe to get those deals. But I think, it's a great deal. Not offered to everybody, but you can get it.
To say it verbally, it is Todd30 is the code. Again, the link though will be in the show notes, and if you watch the Facebook live version of this later or the YouTube version, it is in the show notes as well or in the chat there. So,
hey, but before we let you go, Tatton, I know there's going to be some moms who go, well, my son might be interested in, journalism. How did you know you were, that was the direction you wanted to go? And, was there something you did, in school or, the way your parents in your education that kind of took you that direction?
Yeah, I mean, my parents just really nurtured my curiosity growing up. I read books constantly. And so by the time that it was time for me to go to college, I really just wanted to study stories. I wanted to study, meaning and people and just the really good stuff, So I ended up going to Patrick Henry College, and I was going to be a journalism student, but one of the journalism majors asked me, all right, do you want to spend your life reading the great stories, or do you want to spend your life also writing the great stories? And that's when it clicked for me.
No, that's pretty cool.
I like that.
Well, Tatton, thanks for joining us. Thanks for being on World Watch News. And I assume your face is going to get familiar, voice is going to get familiar as moms and dads subscribe, and your kids are going to get to know Tatton as well.
Yeah, I hope so. I mean, 30 days gives you plenty of time to try it out, and 60 days is even better. So
yeah, it's a good deal.
And I think once really somebody gave us a free subscription, an aunt did, and we were hooked because again, it's a great way to start out your day, and it's a quality product, high engaging, and gives you a little taste of what's going on in the world from a biblical worldview.
Yeah, I can't tell you how many things I've learned just writing the show. Yeah, if I'm not bored, then I don't think your kids are going to be bored either.
Exactly. Well, Ben, this would be a good time for a commercial. So we want to thank Samaritan Ministries, and REDEEM HealthShare for making today's show possible. Everybody knows that sharing works, whether it's helping a neighbor move, cleaning up after a storm, shoveling the sidewalk after a big snow, or sharing healthcare needs. For over 30 years, Samaritan Ministries has been a ministry of Christians helping Christians with healthcare needs. So whether you need a hand or can lend a hand, Being members of Samaritan or their recently launched REDEEM HealthShare makes healthcare sharing possible. Take it from me. It works for my family. Learn more at SamaritanMinistries.org/FamilyMan.
Well, real quick, Dad, before we're going to jump into our second half of the show, is just talking about things that, are not the traditional textbooks, right? But I wanted to say two things that I thought could go with that. Well, they might even go with it, but we went and, I said a while back ago, I wanted to do products, or things that we just appreciate. And I just wanted to say, I'm sure lots of moms listening to this are already, their kids are already obsessed, but my kids have been super big Dude Perfect fans for a long time now. And for their Christmas present, kind of their main big Christmas gift, we bought tickets to go to see Dude Perfect not in concert, but live in Fort Wayne, Indiana, this past week. And we took the two older ones, and it was just super fun time. If they're in the area around you, I'd highly recommend it. They were super fun. Try to sit close if you can. We did not, but it was just really, really special. I mean, I was just so impressed too that they shared the full gospel. They sang a worship song at the end, which was really fun. And it was just a really fun time. So if you're not already on the Dude Perfect train, I think they're just awesome. But I would say use the Dude Perfect app if you have not, on whatever you listen or watch on. It's on iOS and Apple TV and all the other options, because it cuts out on all the ads and stuff, which we really don't like on YouTube. So there are ads, but they've all been approved through them for family safe. And so far I've never seen anything that I thought was inappropriate or anything like that. And they're obviously very intentional about that. So that was one thing that I thought I just mentioned. But if you want to go into our full topic, Dad, go ahead.
You didn't give the teaching textbook commercial.
Oh, I didn't. I'm sorry. Well, I want to say thank you to Teaching Textbooks, because they are amazing, and they're the math curriculum my family uses, and our daughter is going into her second year of using. It's just super interactive. It's engaging. She can do it from her computer, so she found it really fun and easy to use. My wife was able to help her with stuff, and it's just great company and great curriculum. So if you haven't checked them out, you should, over at teachingtextbooks.com, and they have a free trial there, and we really appreciate their support.
Well, even as I was listening to Ted speak, I was just thinking, their product is so good. And I just thought, I know I talk to lots of homeschooling moms, and I often hear them say things like, oh, we like doing these things, but I don't know if you can count it as school. And I'm like, of course you can count it as school. So you put World Watch News and you say you've done it every single day for the entire year or for whatever. And so I thought maybe we could talk about some other things that you can count as school. And I don't know what the big deal is that so many homeschoolers get hung up on this. I know, and it's always funny, like I have these conversations where my daughter will say, Maggie, she'll say, everything I learned about science, I learned on Wildcrats, which is a PBS show with Chris and somebody.
Martin.
Chris and Martin, Krat. And people will say, and they'll say, yeah, but we don't count it as school. And I'm like, why not? And I think there are just some other things I thought maybe we could mention, maybe delve into just briefly about things that you can do that you can count as school that don't feel like school. Because, again, I've said this probably before, that the school uses things that we do, and they count it as school. They plant little gardens. They take their kids on field trips through the woods. They play outside, and they count it all as school. And you can too, not because they do it, but you can do it because it's learning. So I just thought maybe we talk about some of those things. And maybe, Ben, I'll say, just one of them. Something you can count as school. So if you have a kid who likes to cook, whenever they cook, I would count that as school. If they're learning a new recipe or making something for your family, I would count that, and I would do it with 100% integrity. If you like to keep track, and again, in elementary school, don't worry about it. You don't have to keep track. But if you want to have some kind of transcript in high school, you can count it, because they have home ec in regular schools, and they count it as well. Ben, does that get you along, or get you thinking the way I was trying to think?
Just the whole, the fact that the package that information comes in is so important to people. It's like, why is it that just this big old textbook and tests is considered so much more effective than actually hands-on or watching or something like that? It is just this. It's just got us, our minds trapped. Like this is learning. The other stuff isn't. But I think if you have a kid help you or someone or your spouse working on something, whether it's changing a part in the car, or you're building a deck, or you've got to re-roof something, or you're doing the garden, or any of those things. Like, those are extremely valuable things that, again, schools go to enormous expense to try to get their kids to be able to try these things and do these things. And I mean, there is full shop classes where they're teaching you all that stuff. So it does count. It's not some super deep curriculum that you have to, hit to a T. And your kid will come out so equipped in so many ways that so many people are not.
I talk
so
to lots of moms who will say, oh yeah, like my 12-year-old, he's going to work with his dad 3 days a week, and they work on the farm together. They work on construction, and they usually say it like this, we just kind of let that be a school. I don't know if that's right or wrong. And I'm like, of course it's right. Not only is it right, it's fantastic. It gives your child an advantage in lots of different areas. So, I just think there are just so many opportunities. In fact, even in the young age, they count playing as school. And I think you can count it as school as well, because they learn so much. I think what you said, though, Ben, is so true. If there was someone in your work who came and said, hey, we have a new product we want you to try, and they handed you a textbook, you would throw the textbook away and you would not do the product, because that's not how you'd want it, something that was engaging, quick, short, and because that's how and I will even say that's not how we learn now. I would say that's how we've always learned best. But somewhere along the way, maybe it was because we didn't have any free time, and we had all the, we didn't have any distractions. Maybe they just filled it in more verbose. Yeah. But I just think we all learn better with hands-on, highly engaging.
At least in most things, again, there of course there's exceptions, and like, for example, for me, for spelling, I can't spell out loud. I have to see it written down, or else I'm just like lost. I can't visualize it, or at least that's how I do it. I don't know if other people visualize things when they're trying to, which I can't, so I guess I can't. But
you should see the cards he gives me.
Yeah. So yeah, exactly. But yeah, so I think all those things are, I think there's so many opportunities just of, something that we, you mentioned in your thing earlier was, I think helping people, if there's something where you can help as a family, or have your kids go help someone, maybe it's a neighbor and it's mowing her yard, or raking leaves, or carrying a bunch of stuff, whatever it is, like that is all just, again, they're not learning the, better how to write in that moment, but they're learning how to be a person that cares about someone else, and the actual character traits that are a big deal, down the road. And those are the things that matter to God, and also will matter in real life, versus spending a little bit more time in, doing, algebra or whatever else it is, so I think that's just extremely helpful and important. Something
again, just going back, as you're starting to think about the beginning of the school year, and I know some of you moms are starting to think, what are we going to cover? And if you haven't started thinking about it, good for you. But as you're thinking about all that stuff that you want to include, can I just ask you to be brave and to go with what your gut says? Because I believe that gut is the spirit that God has placed in you, to parent your children. Because I think what's best for your kids. And if you think, like for all our kids, they all had a certain bent. Ben was a big history guy, and he loved to read, and he would make little patches out of, military patches. That was all school. Sam liked to draw, so when he would draw, that was his school. Catherine liked to do hair and updos, and that was her school. Ike liked to do, work with electronics, and that was a school. Abe was a builder, and he hammered and nailed. That was a school. Or like even Ben said, if your kid is a people person, remember we had Kathy Cook on and she was talking about the 8 great homeschool smarts. If your kid's smart in that, then let that be their school. But it is going to feel a little different because it doesn't feel like regular school. That's because it's better than regular school. Because I think most of regular school is spent playing school, and we somehow been duped into thinking that's real learning.
Yeah.
And honestly, it's not. It's
Yeah.
not.
Yeah. I mean, as Tatton said, I mean, his parents encouraged him and, what he was interested in and let him be inquisitive and let him be, and that's what leads to people having a career and supporting their family and all of those things, and schools try to do that. Like if you go look at a good quote unquote school, they're trying to do that, and you get to do that by default essentially. And they're trying to replicate more of what you have to offer than the other way around in reality. But unfortunately, all of the degrees and all of that stuff, but a lot of that is geared around trying to harness 20 people's paying attention, and a lot of those tips and tricks and stuff like that, that they learn, it's all about that. When in reality, you're going to have you're there with your kids, obviously they're homeschooled, so it might be more than one or two on one, but, they tend to have big families, but, and it's such a gift. And I truly do believe that you are setting your child up in such an amazing way by being able to just let them have more time to explore the other areas that aren't just, reading, writing, math, science, and all the basic things that everyone does. So, I think it's an amazing thing that you get to do.
Well, we've talked about school long enough. We need to quit talking
back to
about
summer.
School and go back to Summerin.
My son threw a golf club at his brother and cut his nose, so I need to go check out what's going on with that. So
now?
Recently, yes. Golf clubs, man. We've had 3 injuries in the family.
Because I was just over at your house 50 or a half an hour ago.
Things happen quickly, So, and actually, I think that's another thing you could do. Today I took half a day for my son's birthday. He turned 5 today, and we went fishing. And that's just actually a really fun thing. If you struggle spending time sometimes where the kid, some of the things your kids want to do aren't fun, I do think that is actually a fun thing you could do. It's not like, I don't think it's like unbelievably fun, but it's a beautiful day and standing out next to the water wasn't terrible. Yeah. But letting them just cast over and over again, they loved it. And, I thought it was a fun way to spend an afternoon. So
we still got a month. Of summer. If you haven't, you still have some of those things that you haven't done yet, make sure you do them. Because once summer is gone, then you're not sure you're going to get those times back. So, I hope some of the things that we talked about are encouraging. I hope you take advantage of the World Watch news. Again, Ben will put that code in there, and put on top of that Todd 30, TODD 30, and take advantage of that and have a great rest of the week. Enjoy the summer and make sure you're smiling.
All right. Thanks, everyone, for joining us. Again, if you need more weekly encouragement, head on over to our website, thesmilinghomeschooler.com. We have a free weekly email you can sign up for. And also take the homeschool personality test while you're over there if you haven't. It's a great way to just kind of understand your homeschooling approach and others as well, friends and stuff like that. So again, we want to thank Teaching Textbooks for making this all possible. Really appreciate their support. Go check them out, teachingtextbooks.com. And thank you to Samaritan Ministries and REDEEM HealthShare, where members are committed to honoring Christ and serving one another through healthcare needs. As my dad Todd likes to say, we use, love, and recommend Samaritan Ministries, and you can learn more at samaritanministries.org/familyman. But everyone have a great week. Don't forget to smile, and we'll see you real soon.